Picture the largest inhabited castle on earth. 900 rooms spread across 13 acres of towers and courtyards, a fortress that has held English kings for 800 years. Now fill it with open windows in the coldest December England has ever measured. Add a dressing room kept ready every single day for a man who has been dead for 29 years. Add a photograph of every table in every room so that nothing, not a candlestick, not a pen, not a glass, can ever be moved so much as an inch. Add red leather boxes that arrive by train and follow their owner like hungry dogs, a 71-year-old empress learning to write Urdu by lamplight, and a rule never written down anywhere that the most powerful woman in the world must never, under any circumstances, be told she is wrong. That's Windsor Castle in December 1890, the grandest court in Europe and the strangest, a place where the queen of a quarter of the human race sleeps beneath a photograph of a dead man's face, while 3 floors above her, maids with chilblains on their fingers sleep 2 to a bed in rooms without fires, because heat, Her Majesty has decided, is unhealthy. A place where an empire of 372 million people is governed, signature by signature, by a small woman in black who talks to a portrait. A place where the clocks are wound in rooms nobody is allowed to live in. We're going back there tonight, not as tourists filing past the state apartments with a guidebook. We're living it. 1 full day, 1 person. Everything she would have seen, smelled, carried, and survived. From the darkness before dawn to the last candle at midnight. And I want to be straight with you before we start, because this channel keeps its promises. The rooms in this story are real. The dates are real. Every strange habit you're about to watch, every single one, comes from household books, from courtiers' letters, from the memoirs of the Queen's own doctor, and I'll tell you as we go which parts are documented and which parts are the Polish of 40 years of retelling. But the eyes I'm lending you belong to no single girl. I've stitched them together from all the girls who carried the cans and folded the black dresses, because their names mostly didn't survive. The strangeness is history. The eyes are borrowed. That's the deal. So, I make these history stories, and honestly, I still have no idea whether anyone actually sleeps to them, or whether you're all just weirdos who like drifting off to the thought of a widow keeping hot water ready for a husband who died in 1861. Either way, subscribe if you feel like it. Pull the blanket up, get comfortable. Here we go. The can is the first thing. 3 gallons of hot water in polished brass, and by the time you've carried it up 2 flights of the back stairs, your right arm has stopped being an arm and become a rope with a fire at the end of it. £25, maybe more. You switch hands at the landing the way Mrs. Slade taught you, without setting it down, because setting it down means the water arrives lukewarm, and lukewarm water is a failure, and failures in this house are remembered for years. It is 5:30 in the morning, December the 6th, 1890. The corridor ahead of you is one of the longest in England, the Grand Corridor, 550 feet of it, curving around 2 sides of the quadrangle. But you don't use the grand part. You use the servants' passage that runs behind it like a shadow, a narrow artery of bare boards and painted iron pipes, lit at this hour by a single gas jet turned down to a blue whisper. Your boots are wrapped at the heel with felt. Not because anyone told you to, because you learned, in your first week, what happens to a girl whose footsteps are heard in the private apartments before 6 o'clock. The housekeeper's own words, the Queen must never hear the castle working. The castle must simply be warm water appearing, fires laid, dust gone, as if 900 rooms cleaned themselves by magic somewhere in the night. And when I say cold, I need you to understand what cold means in this particular castle, in this particular winter. This is not the ordinary chill of an old stone building. This is the coldest December in the recorded history of England. The month the newspapers will call the start of the Great Frost, when the thermometer in the home park will sit below, freezing for weeks on end, when the Thames below Windsor will grow plates of grey ice thick enough to stand on, and through all of it, by standing order of Her Majesty, the windows of this castle stay open, not stuck open, not forgotten open, opened deliberately every morning on instruction, because the Queen of England believes that heat breeds illness and cold air is God's own medicine. Your breath is a small white ghost in front of you all the way down the passage, inside the castle. That's normal here. Nobody at your level is allowed to find it strange out loud. You stop at a door on the north side, and this is the errand. The one they gave you 8 months ago without explanation. The one you have done every morning since, the strangest errand in Europe, though it took you weeks to understand why. You are carrying hot shaving water to a dead man. The door opens before you can shift the can to knock, because Mrs. Slade is already there, a lamp in her hand, dressed and pinned and armoured in black poplin as if 5:30 were the middle of the afternoon. Mrs. Slade is the senior dresser's deputy, a Yorkshire woman of about 45 with a face like a closed ledger and hands. You noticed this the first day, that are beautiful, long-fingered, completely steady. The hands of a woman who has spent 30 years touching things that cost more than houses and never once dropping one. Steady hands, she says. It's not a greeting. It's the whole of her philosophy, and she says it the way other people say good morning. You go in. The room smells of cold and beeswax and faintly of cigar, which stopped making sense to you months ago and then started making sense again in a way you didn't like, because no one has smoked in this room since December of 1861, and the household keeps the smell alive the way it keeps everything else alive, on purpose. The shutters are folded back, the grate is laid, and on the washstand there is a basin waiting for your water, and beside the basin there is a towel folded in thirds, and there is a nightshirt warming on its rail, and there are clothes laid out across the chair, laid out fresh, changed regularly, brushed and ready. For Albert, Prince Consort of the United Kingdom, who died in the blue room next door at 10 minutes to 11 at night on the 14th of December, 1861, 29 years ago. 29 years next week. You pour the water. Steam climbs off it into the freezing air and vanishes, the way it does every morning, unused, unwatched for no living soul. This is documented, by the way. I want you to know that. Lying there in the dark, because it sounds like the kind of thing a storyteller invents. It isn't. The instruction went out in the first madness of her grief and was never, ever rescinded. His rooms to be maintained, hot water to be brought, his clothes to be laid out, everything kept as though the prince might walk in from the terrace, cold-fingered, wanting to wash before dinner. The household books record it. Visitors whispered about it for decades. The Queen's own physician wrote about the world it created. For 29 years, in a castle at the centre of the largest empire the world has ever seen, one of the daily duties of the royal household has been the care of a man who is not there. On the table near the window there is a glass, a small medicine glass, the kind an apothecary sends up, and it stands exactly where it stands, on the spot it has occupied since a doctor set it down in December 1861, the last glass he drank from, kept where his hand left it. In your second week, you reached for it. You didn't know. You were dusting, and it was a used glass, and every instinct of every scullery in England says a used glass goes down to be washed, and your fingers were an inch away when Mrs. Slade's hand closed around your wrist. Not roughly. That was the frightening part. Gently, the way you'd catch a sleepwalker at the top of the stairs. Nothing, she said, must be moved. Then she let go of your wrist, straightened the towel a quarter inch, and said the thing you have thought about nearly every day since. We don't keep these rooms for a dead man, girl. We keep them for the woman who can't stop opening the door. Welcome to Windsor Castle. Saturday, the 6th of December, 1890, in the 53rd year of the reign of Queen Victoria, the year of the Great Frost, and the 29th December of a morning that has outlasted governments, outlasted wars, outlasted almost everyone who remembers what this castle sounded like when there was a man in it who laughed. Your name, the name we'll borrow anyway, is Ellen Marsh. You're 19 years old, a junior dresser, third and lowest of the women who look after the Queen's wardrobe, and you came here 8 months ago from a village outside King's Lynn in Norfolk with 1 tin box, 2 changes of linen, and a character reference from a rectory. Your wages are £18 a year. The shawl you will fold this morning, 1 shawl, 1 single piece of black cashmere, cost more than you will earn before you turn 21. Back home, everyone said Windsor would be the making of you. They weren't wrong. They just had no idea what it was actually like inside, and neither did you, until the morning a woman with beautiful hands caught your wrist above a dead man's glass. The girl who had your place before you lasted 19 days. Nobody will tell you exactly what she did. The kindest version, whispered by a housemaid on the back stairs, is that she moved something, so you don't move things. You pour the water, you check the towel, you stand for the 10 seconds Mrs. Slade stands, in a silence that is not quite prayer and not quite inspection, and then you back out of the room, and she locks the door, and the two of you go down the shadow passage without a word, and behind you the steam rises off the basin in the empty cold until it stops. Yeah, you carry hot water to a dead man every morning. That's normal. That's your 5:30. Nobody at your level gets to decide what's strange. And here's the thing you've learned about this house, the thing that took you months, and that I need you to hold on to all night, because every hour of this day is going to prove it again. Windsor keeps 2 households, one for the living and one for the dead. The one for the living has some 900 rooms, hundreds of servants, a small town's worth of people under one roof, from the master of the household down to the boy who sharpens knives. The one for the dead has a staff of everyone and a population of 1. And of the 2 households, you have never once been in doubt about which one is run more carefully. Down then, down the back stairs with the empty can banging soft against your knee, past the sleeping doors of the upper servants down to where the castle is already secretly, frantically awake. Because that magic, rooms that clean themselves, fires that light themselves, is made every morning by an army moving in the dark. Housemaids with their boxes of brushes and black lead, moving through the state apartments like ghosts on a schedule. Footmen carrying lamps down for trimming, the smell of the whole enterprise rising up the stairwell to meet you. Last night's candle smoke, damp stone, tea leaves saved for scattering on carpets before sweeping black-lead coal ash, and underneath it all the faint sweetish smell of gas from the jets. The smell you didn't even notice after your first month. The smell of a castle digesting. In the dresser's workroom on the second floor, Annie Phelps is standing at the deal table with her sleeves pushed up, and the first thing you see, the way you see it every morning now, is her hands. Annie is 17, a wardrobe maid, Suffolk-born, quick as a sparrow and about as easy to keep still, and her knuckles this winter are swollen red with chilblains, cracked at 2 joints, because she spends her days handling cold linen in cold rooms and her nights in an attic where the water in the washstand jug has grown a skin of ice every morning since the middle of November. She grins at you anyway. Annie always grins. It's her way of being brave, and it fools almost everyone. 16 degrees of frost in the home park this morning, she says, with a kind of horrible relish. Joseph had it off the night watchman, 16, and every window on the east front to be opened at 8, same as ever. She'll be in heaven. She, in this room, only ever means one person. And because you are new enough to still say things out loud, you say the thing you actually think quietly, into the linen. It can't be healthy. For her, I mean. 71 years old. Annie's grin widens. Healthy, she says. Ellen, it's the healthiest thing in England. Ask the doctors. Ask them with the door shut, mind. Let me tell you what Annie means, because this is the second great strangeness of the day, and unlike the first one, it isn't tender at all. It's simply, magnificently, maddeningly her. Queen Victoria does not feel the cold, or says she doesn't, or has decided, which in this castle amounts to a law of physics, that heat is dangerous, that warm rooms breed fever, and that moving air, the colder the better, is the foundation of health. Her rooms are kept. This is from the people who measured, and people did measure secretly with little thermometers they carried like contraband, at around 60 degrees at the very best and often far below it. Fires in her private rooms are kept small or unlit in December. Windows are opened on instruction in weather that kills sheep. Her doctor, Dr. James Reed, a dry, clever Aberdeen man you will see twice today because he sees her twice every day of his life, is on record about the temperatures he worked in. The ladies of the household wrote home about it year after year in letters that survive, letters that say, in the polished language of well-bred women, help. One maid of honour wrote that the drawing-room at Balmoral was so cold she could barely hold her needle. Courtiers wore fur indoors. Guests stood on the hot water pipes in the corridors just to feel their feet. The Queen, meanwhile, in the same rooms, in her black silk, was comfortable, was more than comfortable, was refreshed. And nobody, hold this thought, we'll come back to it tonight, nobody told her otherwise. Because among the daily rules of this house, deeper than any rule about water cans or medicine glasses, is this one. The Queen is never contradicted. Not about the weather, not about the temperature of her own rooms, not about anything. Her private secretary, Sir Henry Ponsonby, a man who has spent 20 years managing the gap between what is true and what Her Majesty prefers, does it the only way it can be done, sideways in writing, with infinite patience, one careful memorandum at a time. Argue with her face to face. He'd sooner argue with the tide. The whole apparatus of the court is built like a ship around this fact. She's a small, shy, stubborn woman who hates loud voices, hates hot rooms, hates being hurried, hates being told no. And everyone from the Prime Minister to the girl holding this candle has learned to steer by it, so the windows will open at 8, in the coldest December ever measured, and the household will put on wool under its livery and say nothing. Same as yesterday, same as tomorrow. Annie leans across the table, drops her voice, and lifts the corner of a folded huckaback towel in the basket beside her. Under it, wrapped in flannel, is a brick. Not any brick. The brick. Annie's brick, fired every night in the ovens by an arrangement with one of the kitchen maids that costs Annie a penny a week, and is worth, in this weather, approximately the crown jewels. She heats it, wraps it, and smuggles it up the attic stairs under linen, and the two of you sleep with it between you like a third lodger. It is against no written rule, because nobody who writes the rules ever imagined the attics. It is also, you are both quite sure, exactly the kind of comfort that would be frowned on if seen. Softness, in a house whose mistress believes cold is a virtue. So it travels hidden. It has a route like everything in this castle. Even warmth here moves along servants' passages. Tonight, Annie says, patting the flannel like a pet, he goes in the bed by 9. I'm not doing another night like Tuesday. I couldn't feel my feet till chapel. Remember the brick. That's all I'll say. Remember the brick. Mrs. Slade comes in with the lamp and the day begins in earnest. And the day, for a junior dresser, begins with black. The workroom is where the wardrobe lives between wearings, and the wardrobe of Queen Victoria in 1890 is a country with one colour. Black silk, black poplin, black cashmere, black crepe, black dyed lace, black bonnets on their stands like a shelf of roosting birds, the white widow's caps that are the only snow allowed on the mountain. She has worn mourning for 29 years. Not mourning as a period, mourning as a permanent national costume ordered by the yard, cut by the same patterns year after year because she will not be fitted for novelties, finished to a standard that would shame a cathedral. The courtiers tried, gently, decade by decade, to coax her toward grey, toward violet, toward anything. You've heard how those attempts ended. Everyone has. Your work this first hour is preparation. The day dress brushed and inspected seam by seam under the lamp, sleeve lining checked, jet buttons counted with a fingertip, jet, Whitby, jet, the black stone of grief that this rain has turned into an entire industry on the Yorkshire coast. The petticoats aired, the boots warmed exactly enough and not 1 degree more. You work in cotton gloves, you breathe away from the fabric, your chilblain itches inside the glove like a live coal, and you do not scratch it. Because Mrs. Slade is across the table, and Mrs. Slade can hear a girl thinking about scratching. And then there is the jewellery box and the brooch. It comes out of its case onto black velvet. A mourning brooch, gold, glass-fronted, and behind the little glass window, a plaited coil of fine, fair hair. His hair. She has worn hair jewellery of the prince since the 60s. Lockets, brooches, bracelets. The era is mad for hair work. Whole shops in London do nothing else. But hers is not fashion. Hers is cargo. She is carried through her day by objects the way other people are carried by faith. You have handled this brooch perhaps 200 times now, morning and evening, and this morning. As you lift it to the light for inspection, you feel what you felt for the first time on Thursday and hoped you had imagined. The clasp is loose, the pin seats, but the little sea catch has worn. It closes with a whisper when it ought to close with a click. You showed Mrs. Slade on Thursday. Mrs. Slade looked at it for a long moment and said it would go to the jeweller when the household moves to Osborne, 12 days from now, because the alternative is telling the Queen that something is wrong with the brooch, and you do not. In the second week of December, with the 14th coming like a black rock in the calendar, Tell the queen that something is wrong with that brooch. So it whispers shut, and you say nothing, and it goes on the velvet tray with the day's jet, ready to travel to the queen's rooms. Remember the clasp, too. I told you this house runs on things kept exactly as they are. Today you're going to find out what happens when one of them tries to change. At 7, you're sent along to the housemaid's closet off the private apartments with a message for Mrs. Kemp. And Mrs. Kemp, when you find her, is doing the thing that stopped your heart the first time you saw it. And still, 8 months on, makes the back of your neck prickle. She's dusting a room while reading a photograph of the room. Mrs. Kemp is the oldest housemaid in the castle. Nobody knows quite how old. She came in the 40s, before the railway reached Windsor, which makes her service longer than your mother's whole life. A small, bent, unhurried woman with a chin like the toe of a boot, and eyes that miss nothing on any surface in any light. And in her left hand, held open like a hymn book, is an album, thick card pages, and pasted on each page a photograph, a proper albumen print made by a photographer brought in at real expense, of a corner of this very room. The table by the window, photographed. The chimney piece, photographed. Every vase, every miniature, every letter weight and candlestick and china dog, captured in silver and daylight exactly where Her Majesty expects it to remain until the end of the world. This is real, and I'd put it near the top of tonight's whole list quietly, because it never makes the anecdote books the way the hot water does. The Queen ordered her rooms photographed, systematically, room by room, at Windsor, at Osborne, at Balmoral, so that the servants would have a record, so that a housemaid could take everything up, clean it, and put every object back in exactly its place, checked against the print, to the inch, so that nothing, ever, in any room she uses would drift. There are albums of these photographs. They were made as working documents, tools of housekeeping, the way another employer might leave a list of chores, except that what they actually are, if you stand in the cold and think about it, is a woman nailing the entire physical world in place. Time took the one thing. It'll not be permitted to take anything else. Not a candlestick, not an inkwell. Nothing must be moved. You'll stand there catching flies, or you'll hold this, Mrs. Kemp says without turning around. You hold the album, page after page of frozen rooms. You find you're holding it the way you'd hold someone's baby. 40 years I've cleaned in this house, she says, working her brush round the base of a porcelain figure and setting it back down on its own reflection in the polish, precise as a chess move. And I'll tell you what I tell every girl who comes through squeaking about ghosts. There's no ghost in it. There's only her and what she can bear and what she can't. You're not dusting a room, child. You're dusting a photograph. Do it right, and the photograph never changes. And if the photograph never changes, she straightens the figure a last half degree. Then nothing has happened. You follow? Nothing has happened. That's what we make here, all of us. Every morning, we make nothing happen. She takes the album back and tucks it under her arm like a parson with his Bible. Now go on. They're calling her at past. And mind, the boot-toe chin points at you and her voice does not change at all. You keep out of the corridor when the dogs come through, unless you fancy explaining tooth marks in your stocking to Mrs. Slade. The dogs will get the dogs. Everything in this castle happens in its appointed order, and I'm keeping to it, because that's the whole story tonight. The order itself. The strangest daily schedule in Europe, and it runs like a mill wheel. 7:30, and the castle turns over from its secret shift to its official one. The gas jets go down. The grey December daylight comes up reluctantly, the colour of dishwater, through windows now being unlatched one after another down the east front, exactly as Annie promised. You can follow the progress by ear, latch after latch after latch, and then the long cold exhalation of the corridor as 16 degrees of frost walks into the house and makes itself at home. In the private apartments, the wheeled chair is set ready at the foot of the private staircase. Her knees have been bad for years. She walks with a stick indoors and is wheeled where the distances are long, and the distances in a 550-foot corridor are long. The tray of jet goes through. The day dress goes through. You carry the second tray, which is as close to the centre of the world as a third dresser gets. Into the dressing room, under the senior dresser's eye, objects laid out left to right in the order of use, and out again, backwards, before the inner door opens. You have served 8 months, and you could count on your 2 hands the number of times you've properly seen her. You hear her, though. Everyone hears her. Not loudness, the opposite. The Queen speaks quietly, and the whole day arranges itself around her quietness like water around a stone. Doors in the private wing are opened and closed with a softness that would embarrass a nurse in a fever ward. Nobody runs, nobody calls out. A castle with 300 servants, and you could hear a hairpin drop on carpet, because she cannot abide noise, and what she cannot abide seizes. When she does pass, wheeled or on a stick, small, round, in black, with a white cap, the corridor performs its silent trick. Footmen turn their faces to the wall of their own accord, maids melt through the nearest door, and the passage empties ahead of her the way a street empties before rain. A servant seen working is a servant who has failed. You've pressed yourself into a window bay, twice, close enough to hear the rustle of the silk you brushed at 6 that morning, close enough to smell orange flower water, and both times your heart went like a rabbit's, and both times she passed without the slightest sign of having seen you, because not seeing you is a courtesy this house performs in both directions, all day, every day. At 9:30, and here is where the day's strangeness puts on its gentlest face, come the dogs. A groom brings them up from the kennels, and the hush of the corridor is officially, royally suspended for the only creatures in the British Empire who are allowed to be loud in this house. She has kept dogs her whole reign. The kennels at Windsor are practically a department of state, rebuilt handsomely with their own staff, and she visits them and knows them and buries them under headstones with epitaphs and has them painted in oils the way other sovereigns have their generals painted. The favourite of these years is Marco, a small flame-coloured Pomeranian she brought back from Florence in 1888. A creature with the self-assurance of a field marshal and approximately the same authority in this household. And it is a matter of plain record, confirmed by the people who stood in the room, that Marco takes his morning attendance not at her feet, but on the breakfast table itself, up among the silver, inspecting the arrangements like a customs officer, while his mistress, who forbids almost everything, forbids him nothing. What the Queen eats, and how fast, that's a different story, and this channel has told it on another night. Tonight you stay outside that door. What you need this morning is only the sound, carrying down the passage as you go by with your armful of tissue paper. Little dog feet on white damask, a fork set down, and the low, warm, unmistakable voice of the loneliest woman in Europe talking to a Pomeranian as if he were the only sensible minister she has. Yeah, there's a dog on the breakfast table of the Queen of England. That's normal. That has been normal for years. The footmen no longer even see it, and neither, after 8 months, do you? And it is somewhere in this same mid-morning passage of the day, you, invisible, flattened into your window bay with your tissue paper as steps approach, that you see the two of them come down the corridor together, and the whole strange width of her world goes by you in a single frame. First the Queen, in the wheeled chair this morning, pushed at a slow walk, and beside the chair, in a scarlet and gold that stands out against this house of black like a struck match, a tall young Indian man with a dark beard and a quiet, careful face, Abdul Karim. The household calls him the Munshi, the teacher, because that is what he is. He came over from Agra in the Jubilee summer of 1887, 24 years old, to wait at her table, and within a year the waiting was over, because she asked him to teach her his language, and he said yes, and he turned out, this is in her own hand, in her own journals, to be good at it. Patient, clear, unafraid of her, which may be the rarest quality in this entire castle. They are talking as they pass. You catch perhaps 6 words and you understand none of them, because the words are Hindustani and the Queen of England is practicing. Hold that picture a moment, the way you held the album. A 71-year-old woman who rules India and has never seen it, and knows now that she never will. Learning every single day the language of it, not as a gesture, with exercise books. We'll sit in on the lesson this evening, you and I, because a junior dresser carries lamps where she's told, and this evening she'll be told. And I'll tell you now, so you can carry it through the day the way you carry the cans. Of all the habits in this castle, the hot water, and the photographs, and the frozen rooms, this one, the daily lesson, is the only one that points forward instead of back. The only new thing she's let into the schedule in 30 years. The household hates it. You'll hear why and what that hate was made of, and I'll be honest about all of it. But that's evening. It's barely 10 in the morning. The frost on the inside of the workroom window hasn't melted and won't. And down in the Sovereign's entrance, the 2-horse messenger cart from the station is unloading the true engine of this whole day. The thing that makes all the rest of it. The grief, the dogs, the frozen air, so much stranger, because it proves she's not hiding from the world. It is the world, arriving in leather boxes the colour of dried blood, and she will open every single one. The boxes are coming, and the man who walks behind them is the man who runs the gap between the Queen and the truth. You see the boxes because you are sent down with a mended glove for one of the pages, and the mended glove puts you at the foot of the King John Tower stairs at the exact minute the morning delivery goes up. Red dispatch boxes, that particular deep scarlet leather over pine, brass-locked, scuffed at the corners from 40 years of trains and saddlebags and ship's mails, carried 2 at a time by a footman, and behind the footman, with a folder of papers under one arm and the expression of a man doing sums in his head, Sir Henry Ponsonby. Sir Henry is 65, a retired Major General with a soldier's shoulders going soft and grey, whiskers, and the kindest tired eyes in the castle. And he has been private secretary to the Queen for 20 years, which the gentleman of the household will tell you softly is roughly equivalent to 20 years commanding a fortress under continuous siege, where the enemy is the entire outside world, and the fortress must never learn what the siege is actually like. Every government paper the sovereign sees comes through him, every awkward request, every ministerial tantrum, every piece of news that must be broken gently, breaks first on Sir Henry, who then spends his evening finding the one arrangement of English words that will carry the truth into her rooms without setting anything on fire. His letters, his family kept them, and they are some of the driest, funniest, saddest documents this whole reign produced, are the record of a man translating between a queen and a century in both directions daily for 2 decades. And here is the habit, the one the newspapers of your own day would find hardest to believe, because the picture everyone carries of this queen is the recluse in black, the widow at the window. The boxes come every day of the year, wherever she is, Windsor, Osborne, the top of a Scottish glen. The red boxes follow her by train and messenger, and every day she opens them, reads them, and works them. Cabinet papers, Foreign Office telegrams, army lists, church appointments, the endless official correspondence of the largest empire on earth, annotated in that headlong, sloping hand of hers, queried, objected to, sent back. She has done this since June 1837. She did it the week he died. She has never once stopped. Do the sum, the way you do sums with your own £18 a year. 53 years on the throne, boxes every day, thousands of documents a year passing under one pair of eyes. By the time this reign ends, the total of papers she has personally read and signed and returned will run into the millions. The ministers who call her a recluse get their boxes back by return messenger, faster than some of them turn their own work around, with her opinions in the margins. Whatever else this day is, and you have seen already what else it is a working day. It is always a working day. The strangest thing about the strangest court in Europe may be this. Under the crepe and the photographs and the frozen air, there is a bureaucrat of terrifying stamina, and she never misses a shift. Sir Henry pauses at the stair-foot to shift his folder, sees you flatten yourself against the wall with your glove, and, this is why the household would follow him off a cliff, gives you a small nod, as if you were a person. "Cold enough for you?" he says, and does not wait for the answer a maid could not give anyway, and goes up after his boxes with the step of a man who knows exactly how many hours of paper stand between him and his bed. Twice a day the boxes go up, remember that too. The second delivery comes this evening, and this evening the boxes will not be routine, because it is Saturday the 6th of December, 1890, and 150 miles away in a committee room in Westminster, a political party is tearing itself in half. But the Telegraph hasn't told the castle yet, and I'm keeping to the order of the day. In this house, of all houses, we keep to the order of the day. The glove delivered, you take the long way back, the long way being 30 seconds longer. Because the long way passes the window bay where Joseph will be, and Joseph is worth 30 seconds. Joseph Hart is a second footman, 24, Berkshire born, 6 feet of state livery and unkillable cheerfulness, and he stands his morning wait at the east front windows like a scarlet statue that occasionally winks. You like Joseph the way the whole lower household likes Joseph. He tells you things. The night watchman's frost readings, which visitors' valet was sick on the back stairs, what the papers said. Joseph is the castle's unofficial gazette, published in a murmur out of the corner of a perfectly motionless mouth. This morning what the corner of his mouth says is, "Smoke in rooms to be aired special tonight. Gentlemen coming with the boxes party Monday. Poor devils." And you nearly laugh, which would be a disaster, so you turn it into a cough, which is nearly as bad, because of what poor devils means, and every servant in this castle knows what it means. Her Majesty hates tobacco, not disapproves of, hates with the full weight of a will that has bent prime ministers. The smell of it, the sight of it, the idea of it, Smoking anywhere near her rooms, her corridors, her person is simply impossible, in the way that snow in July is impossible. And since her rooms and corridors are functionally the entire castle, the household solution is a single distant smoking room, tucked away at the far end of everything, where gentlemen, cabinet ministers, princes, bishops, if bishops smoked, may go late at night like schoolboys behind a hedge. Guests at her houses have left accounts of the lengths this drove them to, and some of those accounts have been polished by 40 years of dinner-table retelling. So I'll give you the honest grades. That great men trudged long corridors in the cold to reach the one permitted room, documented, complained of in writing by the great men. That in her Highland houses the ban ran so hard that gentlemen were reduced to smoking up their bedroom chimneys, lying on the floor to puff into the grate. That one is court legend, told and retold by people who swore they'd seen it, and I give it to you as legend. Though I'll say this, nobody who worked a season in this household ever found it hard to believe. What is not legend? What is standing daily fact, enforced this morning and every morning, is that the entire adult male population of this castle, from field marshals down to Joseph, organises its oldest vice around one small woman's nose. And Joseph smokes, a short clay pipe, thin black shag at 4p an ounce. Perhaps the only thing Joseph truly owns besides his Sunday coat. He smokes it off duty, out by the stables, upwind of everything, careful as a burglar. And he carries his tobacco in a flat tin with the dented lid, and the tin lives, because livery has no pockets worth the name, wherever Joseph last dared to leave it. As you pass his bay, you see exactly where he last dared to leave it. The tin is sitting on the windowsill, the state windowsill, in the state corridor, 6 inches from a curtain that was hung when George IV was spending this nation into the ground, in plain sight of anyone who walks the east front, and down the far end of the east front, moving this way at her unhurried chess-move pace, checking surfaces against the album under her arm, comes Mrs. Kemp. Joseph cannot move. That's the beautiful, terrible joke of it. A footman on his weight stands where he stands, and a footman seen scrambling along a state corridor, stuffing something into his breeches, would be a footman explaining himself to the master of the household by noon. His eyes meet yours. The scarlet statue has gone slightly grey. You keep walking. That's all you can do this pass. You have tissue paper to deliver and a corridor to be invisible in, and Mrs. Kemp is still 40 feet off, and a girl who stops to fiddle at a windowsill under the housemaid's own eyes helps nobody. But you clock the tin the way Mrs. Kemp clocks candlesticks, position, distance, witnesses, and as you turn down the workroom stairs you hear, behind you, the soft chess-move steps coming on, page by page, sill by sill. Leave it balanced there, the tin and the mourning both. This castle teaches you to leave things balanced. Half the art of service is knowing which falling object is yours to catch, and the when is not yet. Back in the workroom, the middle of the morning settles into its long, cold, close work. The fine mending. This is the part of your day nobody in a novel would bother with, and the part that will someday be your trade if your eyes last. The invisible repair of black on black, chain mending a pulled thread in silk you can barely see against the winter light. 11 stitches to the 1/4 inch. Your breath held in 3s. Mrs. Slade works across from you at the crepe. Nobody else is allowed the crepe. And this is when she talks, if she talks at all, because close work loosens her the way ale loosens other people. Today, threading a needle you could not see at all, she says, "You'll do the evening water with me again. Hold your candle steady this time." A pause, 11 stitches long. 14th, next week. She'll go to the mausoleum. Whole household, same as every year. Another pause. "You've not seen a 14th yet?" "No, Mrs. Slade." "No," she agrees to the crepe. And then, so quietly that you'll spend the rest of the day deciding whether you truly heard it. 29 of them I've seen. 11 more stitches. The frost flowers on the window have not moved. Somewhere below, a door closes softly, and the castle goes on making nothing happen. It fails to make nothing happen at 12:15. You know something is wrong the way you always know in this house, not by noise but by the shape of the quiet. A housemaid comes up the workroom stairs too fast, which is to say at a normal walking pace, and puts her head in and asks for Mrs. Kemp's whereabouts in a voice that has been flattened by main force and is gone. Mrs. Slade does not look up from the crepe, but her needle stops and stays stopped, listening, and so does yours. Here is what happened, as you will piece it together by supper from 3 tellings that mostly agree. In one of the private sitting rooms, a room in daily use, a room the Queen sat in yesterday evening, the second housemaid of that floor, a perfectly good, careful girl of long standing, finished her turning out this morning, checked her surfaces, and moved on. And at noon the head housemaid of the floor, walking the rooms as she always walks them, stopped in the doorway with the album open, and looked from the page to the chimney-piece, and from the chimney-piece to the page, and felt the bottom drop out of her stomach. A candlestick, one of a pair, ormolu, on the chimney-piece shelf. In the photograph, its base sits with an edge aligned to the marble's scrolled border. On the shelf, it stood perhaps an inch inside that line. An inch, 1 inch, in a castle of 13 acres. Now, I want you to feel the next half hour from the inside, because if you feel this, you understand the whole household. And if you understand the household, you understand her, and that's what tonight is for. Nobody shouted. Nobody will be dramatic. Drama is forbidden here more sternly than tobacco. What happens instead is a silent, total mobilization. The head housemaid fetches Mrs. Kemp. Mrs. Kemp comes at her chess-move pace that somehow eats corridor faster than running, album under arm. The room is entered. The photograph is consulted the way a ship's master consults his chart with rocks under the lee. And the question, the only question breathed rather than spoken over that inch of bare marble, is not who moved it. The question is, did she see? Was the Queen in that room after the candlestick strayed or before? Did those pale, protuberant, all-remembering eyes that have held the details of 900 rooms for half a century, eyes trained by grief itself, the most exacting drill master there is, to notice everything because everything is a relic? Did they pass over that chimney-piece and register, even for a half-second before dinner, that the world had drifted? Because if they did, nothing will be said today. That is not how it comes. It comes in 2 days, or 5, as a quiet word from a dresser to the housekeeper. Her Majesty wonders whether the sitting-room is being attended to as it should be. And that sentence, by the time it reaches the girl with the duster, weighs 100 weight. Careers in this house, this is simple fact, have narrowed and ended over the placement of objects. The maids call it, among themselves, in whispers on the attic stairs, being remembered. You do not want to be remembered. in the strangest sense ever given to those words. In this castle, the whole art of survival is to be forgotten by the kindest employer in England, because, and here's the turn, the thing you learned by your 3rd month, the thing the comic papers in London will never print because it doesn't fit the cartoon, she is kind, genuinely, personally kind, in the direct, unadorned way of her whole character. This is the same woman who knows the names of the men in the stables and the illnesses of their wives, who sends soup and flannel and her own doctor to sick cottagers at Balmoral, and sits by their beds herself, who, when a housemaid loses a mother, somehow knows, and somehow a black dress arrives, paid for with a note in that famous hand. The wages here are not grand, but the place is for life, and everyone knows it. The pensions, the cottages for the old ones, the way she will not have a servant turned off in age or sickness. Half the strangeness of serving her is exactly this. The same will that pensions the widow of a gatekeeper has also decided that a candlestick must stand on its own reflection forever, and both come from the identical place, a heart that cannot let go, of anyone, of anything. The household is not run on cruelty, it is run on the most exacting tenderness the world has ever seen, and an inch of marble can put a good servant's stomach into her boots without Her Majesty ever saying an unkind word, because the unkindest thing in this castle is the thought of her face, quietly hurt, noticing. By 1 o'clock the candlestick stands on its line. The album is closed. It is established from the page's log of her movements that she was wheeled past that door yesterday and did not go in. The world drifted, and she never saw. And so, Mrs. Kemp's own doctrine, nothing has happened. The second housemaid of that floor will eat no dinner even so. And the household exhales, altogether without a sound, and resets itself, the way it has 10,000 times, around the granite fact at the centre of every day of every year of this endless reign. Nothing must be moved. Nothing must change. Nothing is allowed to end. Your own dinner happens at 1, in the servants' hall, boiled beef, carrots, sweet pudding, eaten fast and hot in the one reliably warm room in your entire day. A low thunder of 100 knives and forks under the old flags. And I'll leave it at that, partly because it's the only unremarkable hour this castle contains, and partly because the talk over the beef is all of one thing, and the one thing is the afternoon, the drive. Because at 1:30 a groom from the Mews reports what the sky over the Great Park is doing, and what the sky over the Great Park is doing on the 6th of December in the great frost is turning the colour of gunmetal, with a wind out of the northeast that the old carters are already calling snow, and the drive will happen anyway. Everyone at that table knows it will happen anyway. It has happened anyway for 50 years. Let me lay this one out plainly while you finish your pudding, because of all the daily oddities in this house, it is the one her own people documented most bitterly, and the one you're about to watch with your own borrowed eyes. Every afternoon of her life, at around 2:30 or 3, the Queen goes out. Not sometimes, not weather permitting. Every afternoon, the carriage is ordered, the horses are put to, and she drives out into the park for 2 hours. And she drives, by preference, in an open carriage, in all weathers, at all temperatures, her whole life long. Rain. The drive happens, under waterproofs. Frost like today's. The drive happens, with hot water bottles hidden under fur rugs, and a lady in waiting opposite her slowly turning to marble. Snow. Actual falling snow in the Highlands in December. The drive's happened, are recorded multiple hours long, with the lady's accounts surviving to whimper about it in the archives. Her maids of honour wrote home about the open carriage in ways their mothers must have read through their fingers. Her doctor logged the chills that followed, the lady's chills, never hers. One of the truly wicked details in the courtier's letters is that she felt the cold so little, and believed in it so completely, that she would solicitously ask a half-frozen lady whether she did not find the air delicious. She is not being cruel. Keep tonight's rule, she is never being cruel. She is being, daily, punctually, in defiance of an entire century's advice, herself. The open air is her medicine, her escape, the one place the castle's silence can't follow her. A doctor once told her nerves needed it, and she took the prescription for life. And besides, a Highland servant taught her long ago in the 60s that fresh air never hurt anybody. And she believed him the way she believed almost no one else. And he's been dead these 7 years. John Brown, that was, 1883. And the household does not say the name. And there is a whole other night's story folded inside that silence, and I'm going to leave it folded because she would prefer it so. And tonight, for once, everyone is doing what she prefers. So, the drive will happen in this. The servants' hall finishes its pudding on that settled note, the way a garrison finishes breakfast before a sortie. And up in the workroom at 1:30, the preparation begins, and the preparation is yours, and this is where your day, 8 months of cans and needles and being invisible, tips over the edge of routine and starts to slide. Because the sealskin cloak comes down, and the fur rugs come up from their presses, and the hot water bottles go down to the still room to be filled, and Mrs. Slade lays the velvet tray for the afternoon toilette, bonnet, gloves, the silver-mounted stick, the jet, the brooch, and stops. Her beautiful steady hands go still on the velvet, and you follow them, and you see it the same half-second she does. The brooch, the glass-fronted gold oval with the plaited coil of fair hair, the one she has worn on her left shoulder through 29 Decembers, the one that is not jewellery but cargo, the one object on this tray that cannot be substituted, apologised for, or explained. The sea catch hasn't just worn loose. Sometime between this morning's inspection and now, metal fatigue, cold, 29 years of daily service in an unheated house. The little curl of gold has cracked through at the shoulder. The pin drops into its catch and lies there, held by nothing but gravity and habit. And Her Majesty will be dressed for the drive in 50 minutes, and she will drive 2 hours through a rising snow wind in an open carriage, and she will wear his hair a heart while she does it, because she has worn it every day for 29 years, and nothing, say it with the whole castle now, nothing must be moved, nothing must change, nothing is allowed to end. 50 minutes. Mrs. Slade looks at you across the tray. Steady hands, she says. Understand the shape of the trap before you watch her spring out of it, because the trap is the whole castle in miniature. The straightforward thing, the thing any sane household would do, is to send word. The brooch is broken, Your Majesty. Here is another. This one goes to the jeweller. And it cannot be done. Not because she would rage, because of what it would actually be. 8 days before the 14th of December. A small ceremony of loss. One more thing, gone wrong, taken away, changed, reported to a woman whose entire daily architecture exists, so that nothing is ever again reported gone. Mrs. Slade would sooner hand her a dead bird on the velvet. The other road is the jeweller in Windsor town. There is a man on Peascod Street who holds a warrant. 5 minutes' walk beyond the Henry VIII gate, and there is no time, and worse than no time, there is no secrecy. The brooch leaving the castle is itself an event, and events are what we do not have here, which leaves the third road, the servants' road, the one that runs, like everything else today, out of sight. "Fetch Annie," says Mrs. Slade, "and bring me the small pliers from the button drawer and thread, no, silk floss the buttonhole twist black." Her voice has not changed at all. Steady hands, steady voice. You could set a fracture by that voice. And Ellen, walk. You walk. Through 2 corridors and down a stair, at the pace of a girl on an errand of no importance whatever, with your heart going like a sparrow against a window. What happens in the next half hour at that workroom table is, you will think later, the finest thing you have seen human fingers do, and you have watched this household do surgery on lace older than the American colonies. Mrs. Slade does not attempt the gold. Cracked gold wants a jeweller's flame. Touch it with pliers and it snaps, and then there is no hiding anything from anyone. Instead, she builds around it a sling of black buttonhole silk, waxed, laid in 8 turns around the pin's broken catch and the brooch's back plate, each turn seated with the point of a needle, knotted with a surgeon's knot her mother taught her in a Yorkshire cottage before Prussia was an empire. A lashing is what it is. Sailors would recognise it. It turns the dead catch into a fixed eye, and the pin now screws home under the silk with a friction grip that will hold through a cavalry charge. Invisible, because black on black in this house is the native camouflage of everything. Reversible, because at Osborne in 12 days the floss comes off with 1 snip, and the brooch goes quietly to the jeweller after all, and nothing, the word tolls through this whole day like the curfew tower bell, will ever have happened. Annie holds the brooch steady in a nest of flannel. You hold the lamp and pass the needle and do not breathe on anyone. Mrs. Slade works with her wrists braced on the table edge, 8 turns, 4 minutes a turn, while the light out the window goes from dishwater to slate, and the first dry grains of snow begin to tick against the glass like thrown sand. At 2:20 she holds it up. Pin in, pin out, pin in. The grip is sweet and hard. On the velvet the brooch looks exactly, precisely, photographically, as it has looked every day for 29 years. "There," says Mrs. Slade to the brooch. "Not to you." And then she does something she has never done in 8 months, which is to sit back, close her eyes, and let out 1 long breath through her nose. It lasts perhaps 2 seconds. Then the ledger of her face closes again, and the tray is up on her hands, and she's gone down the corridor to dress the Queen of England for a drive into a snowstorm, and you are left holding the lamp, understanding at last, in your bones and chilblains, what the beautiful steadiness of those hands is actually made of. It is made of 30 years of afternoons exactly like this one, that nobody was ever allowed to see. 2:30. The castle changes key. You hear it happen. Everyone in the private wing hears it. It is the 1 hour when the hush has a hole in it. The crunch and ring of the horses coming round from the royal mews under the archway. Iron shoes striking sparks of sound off frozen gravel. The carriage, and it is the open carriage, of course it is. The closed brougham stood ready and was not asked for, was never going to be asked for. Drawing up at the sovereign's entrance with the 2 greys blowing steam like kettles, the groom's voices pitched low even outdoors, and the wind. You can hear the wind now even through shut windows, a long deep sea sound in the elms of the Long Walk, and the Long Walk runs dead straight ahead that carriage for 2 2/3 miles southeast, into the teeth of it. The hot water bottles go out under the fur rugs. stoneware pigs of scalding water slung in wool, tucked where royal and noble feet will rest. And here, in the bustle at the cloakroom door, is the Honourable Maria Dean, maid of honour, in waiting this week, and therefore in that carriage this afternoon. And I want you to look at her carefully, because hers are some of the truest eyes we have on this entire reign. 28 years old, clever, musical, devoted to her mistress, and freezing. She has been in waiting since 1887. Her letters home from these years survive and were published long after under her married name Mallet, and they are one of the honest windows into this house. The affection in them is real, and so is the cold. It is Marie's set who counted the degrees in the drawing rooms. Marie's set who wrote home from the Highlands about open carriages in falling snow and fingers too dead to write the letter that is describing them. Marie who will note, with the loyal exasperation of the truly fond, how Her Majesty, rosy and refreshed, wonders that anyone could find such weather anything but delicious. When I tell you the ladies of this court earned their keep, this afternoon is what I mean. There is no drawing-room accomplishment on earth that prepares you for 2 hours of statutory duty at 16 degrees of frost, in silk stockings, smiling. Marie stands at the door while the rugs go out, flexing her fingers inside her muff like a woman about to be operated on, and says, to nobody, in a bright clear undertone that is the well-bred version of a howl, delicious afternoon for it. And this is when Annie moves. You see the whole thing because you are 3 steps behind with the second muff, and it takes perhaps 4 seconds. Annie, going by with an armful of folded lap flannels for the carriage, one of which, you know its shape by now the way you know your own boots, is not a folded lap flannel. Annie checks her step beside the maid of honour, dips, and the brick, the fired at dawn, penny a week, crown jewels brick, passes inside its flannel from the servants' pile into the fur rug destined for the facing seat. The lee seat, the lady's seat, tucked down where stoneware bottles gone lukewarm by 4 o'clock will not reach. Not a word, not a glance. Maria Diane will ride out into the great frost this afternoon with a Suffolk wardrobe maid's own bed warmth against her feet, and will never know it, and will write home Tuesday that she survived Saturday's drive better than she deserved. Annie catches your eye going back past you. The grin is very small and perfectly steady. Tonight the 2 of you will sleep cold, and it will be worth it. And neither of you will say so out loud, because saying things out loud is not how this house loves anybody. Then the corridor empties ahead of a small sound of wheels, and she comes. Down the emptied passage, wheel to the door, then up on her stick for the steps as she insists. She's helped exactly as much as she permits, and not one hand more. The Queen, dressed for the weather the way she has dressed for weather her whole reign. Which is to say, barely differently than for a corridor. The sealskin, the black bonnet, the widow's white at her throat, the veil down against the snow grains. 71 years old, 4 feet 11 inches of pure will in a carriage cloak, and on her left shoulder, catching the last grey daylight for half a second as she passes the window where you have flattened yourself into your final bay of the afternoon. A small oval of gold, riding as sound and sure as it has ridden for 29 years, holding a coil of fair hair against the storm on 8 turns of wax silk that she will never know are there. She pauses at the open door. The wind comes up the steps to meet her. 16 degrees of frost with snow on it. A wind that has been putting strong men in bed all week, and you see it. You are one of perhaps 4 people close enough and invisible enough to see it. Under the veil, the heavy, sad, formidable face lifts into that wind like a swimmer's into a wave, and is, for one entirely private second, glad. Then she is handed down, and in, and rugged. Mary folds herself onto the facing seat over a warmth she cannot yet account for. The groom swings up, and the greys take the carriage out from under the archway into the falling snow, through the George IV gateway, out onto the long, dead straight white avenue, southeast, into the wind, exactly on time, every day, in everything. That's the habit, whole. Not an old woman's whim, but a standing order against the universe. Weather is change, and she has outfaced change for 29 years, and she's not going to start losing to it on a Saturday. The household watches the carriage shrink down the long walk, you at your window, Joseph at his, the grooms at the arch, until the snow takes it, at about half a mile, the way the sea takes a boat, and then the castle does the strangest thing it does all day. Stranger than the hot water, stranger than the photographs. It relaxes, not loudly. Nothing here is loud. But you can feel it in the boards, the way you feel a ship come off the wind. Doors close a half-tone less carefully. 2 housemaids talk at normal pitch on the stairs and nobody dies of it. Somewhere below a footman actually laughs. For 2 hours every afternoon, whatever the weather, the sovereign is out of the house. And for those 2 hours the most silent great house in Europe breathes out. It is the castle's one daily holiday, and the drive gives it to them as regularly as she gives them everything else. Punctually, in all weathers, without fail. The servants don't say this. They don't have to. The whole building says it for them. It is in this loosened hour that the matter of the tin gets settled, and it does not get settled the way Joseph feared. He comes off his weight at 3, and you happen, all right, you arrange, to be crossing the east front landing as he makes for his window sill at the fastest walk livery allows. And the sill is bare, polished, frost-flowered, and bare. You watch 6 feet of footmen lose a full inch of height, and you're still watching when the voice comes from the window bay behind you both, unhurried as ever, dry as dust in an urn. "4 an ounce, that shag," says Mrs. Kemp. She's at her endless slow patrol, album under arm, not even looking at him. From somewhere inside the folds of her apron she produces the flat tin with the dented lid and holds it out at the end of a stiff old arm. "My late husband smoked it. Rots your wind and ruins your coat. Off a state window-sill, Joseph Hart in the 2nd week of December." Joseph takes the tin the way a man takes back his own heart. He has gone scarlet to match the livery. "Mrs. Kemp, if the steward, you'd have been remembered," she says, and lets the word sit there in the cold air between the 3 of you with all its castle weight, and then does the last thing either of you expects. She sniffs. A short, dismissive Yorkshire sniff, aimed at the entire visible world, and goes back to her patrol. "I've been forgetting worse than you for 40 years, she says to the corridor at large. Chess moves steps receding. "Mind you find a pocket for it. Nothing on my sills but what's in my album." And that, you think, watching Joseph stow the tin next to his ribs like a reliquary, is the truest map of this place anyone will ever draw you. Above stairs, an album where nothing is allowed to change. Below stairs, 40 years of small mercies, unrecorded on purpose. The castle keeps 2 ledgers too. Only one of them is ever photographed. At 3:30, Mrs. Slade sends you up with the pressed linen for the wardrobe presses in the Victoria Tower, and this errand, 4 flights, Two of them a corkscrew of cold stone that was old when Agincourt was news, is the one you never mind because of the window at the top. It is an arrow slit widened into a casement, higher than almost anything else on this side, and from it, catching your breath with the linen on your hip, you can see the whole world you now live in, laid out like one of Mrs. Kemp's photographs. The world checked against itself, every piece in its place. Below you, the East Terrace and its geometry of frozen garden, the fountain a fist of grey ice. Beyond it, the home park, white as the linen on your hip, and the long walk running its improbable dead straight line southeast through the storm haze toward the Copper Horseman on Snow Hill, planted by Charles II with elms that are older now than the Kingdom of Prussia. You cannot see the far end today. The snow has taken it. Somewhere out in that whiteness, 2 greys and a carriage, and the Queen of England are making their turn for home. North, the river valley. The Thames, a dark seam between white banks, already growing its plates of ice. By January, boys will walk on it at Datchet, and this month will go into the record books and stay there for 100 years and more. The coldest December ever measured in England, and you are living in it, in an attic with 1 shed brick. And across the seam the roofs of Eton, the chapel riding above the town like a stone ship, where boys not much older than Annie are construing Latin in the scarves, and beyond that, grey under its own smoke, the beginning of the 30 miles of London. And you think the thing you always think at this window, the thing that is either a prayer or its opposite, you've never decided. All of it, the frozen fountain, the college, the river, the capital, the empire beyond the capital, the 372 million souls of every colour and climate on earth. All of it converges every single day through red boxes and railway lines and telegraph wire onto one small woman in black, currently driving her open carriage through a snowstorm because stopping is the one thing she does not do. You are the lowest moving part in the largest machine mankind has ever built. A cog so small the engineers don't know your name, but you're here. You carried the water this morning. Your thread is on her shoulder in that storm. That's not nothing. Whatever else this day is, that's not nothing. The light goes early in the great frost. By 4 the valley below the window is blue-grey. By 1:15 the lamplighters are moving along the terrace like fireflies, and the snow has thickened from grains to feathers, and the wind in the long walk elms has found a lower note, and the carriage is not back. 4:30 is the hour. The schedule in this house is scripture. You could set the chapel clock by her wheels under the archway, and 4:30 comes up from the curfew tower in 5 soft strokes of the quarter bells and 1 deep one, and the gravel below the sovereign's entrance stays empty, and the snow falls through the new lamplight in long slants, and the castle, which relaxed at 2:30, begins, joint by joint, to stiffen again. You come down from the tower into a hush with a new taste to it. Grooms stand at the arch with lanterns lit, looking down the white avenue at nothing. The equerry on duty has come out coatless, gone back in, come out again in a coat. In the cloakroom passage the maids are gathered at the windows, and nobody's pretending to work. And Annie finds your elbow in the half-dark and holds on to it, and the two of you watch the snow slant through the lamplight, and somewhere behind you a footman says, low to another footman, the thing everyone is thinking. Drifts'll be over the fellows by Snow Hill. 15 minutes. In a castle where nothing is ever allowed to happen, you learn what the household sphere actually looks like when something might be happening. It looks like stillness with the current turned up, It looks like Mrs. Slade appearing silently at the cloakroom door with warmed towels over her arm. Prepared, because preparing is the only permitted form of panic, and standing there unmoving, watching the avenue, her beautiful steady hands gripping the towel rail whiter than the towels. 71 years old, 16 degrees of frost, an open carriage, the kindest, most frightened silence in England. And then the lanterns at the arch swing up, and a groom's voice, pitched low, even now, says, "Lights on the walk." They come up out of the snow the way they went into it. Greys first, steam and lamplight, the whole equipage furred white on its windward side, wheels throwing crusted arcs, and the relief that goes through the household is as silent and total as everything else it does. A single breath, let out through 40 windows at once. The carriage swings under the archway. The steps go down. Maria Diane is handed out first, and the honest truth is that she comes down the steps like a woman of 90, snow to the eyebrows, moving on ankles she clearly cannot feel. She'll write it all home on Tuesday. The drift at the double gates, the wind on the open mile, delicious, and turns at once, as her office requires and her heart apparently seconds, to the carriage door. And out of the white crusted rugs down the steps, veil frosted stiff as cake lace, cheeks, you can see them even by lamplight as the veil goes up. Pink, actually pink, comes the Queen, 4'11" of entirely unbothered sovereign, who pauses under the arch, looks back once at the storm she's just spent 2 hours inside as a hostess looks at a garden that has behaved itself, and says to Marie, to the equerry, to the frozen and reassembling universe in general, in that low, clear, carrying voice, that the air had been most refreshing, that they went rather late tomorrow, perhaps, the snow being likely deeper by afternoon. Tomorrow, perhaps a little later, on account of the snow being deeper, not at all, later. And she goes in on her stick past the bowing lamps, small and indomitable and faintly steaming, trailed by a maid of honour with a Suffolk brick's last warmth still in her rug, and murder in her grateful heart, and the doors close, and the castle folds itself around its mistress again, and that carriage swallowed whole by the worst December in recorded history, and handed back pink and punctual and planning tomorrow's dose. That is the peak of this particular mountain, the most extraordinary thing this most extraordinary of ordinary days will do in front of you. No battle, no proclamation. An old lady went for her drive every single day. That's the whole secret of her, if she has one, and you were there, at the window, holding towels, when it snowed. After that the day comes down off the mountain slowly, the way winter dusk comes down, and everything that is left of it belongs to the quiet side of her strangeness, the lamplit side, the side that makes the household's eyes soften even when their fingers are dead with cold. So settle deeper into your pillow. The storm is on the other side of the glass now, and it stays there. Nothing else today will hurry. The wet sealskin comes back to the wardrobe rooms breathing frost and lanolin, and is dried the way cathedrals are restored, slowly, at a distance from the small fire turned by the hour. The bonnet's crape must be steamed where snowmelt spotted it. You hold it over the kettle's mouth with both hands while Annie counts under her breath, because crape marks if you dream. The brooch comes back on its velvet, unpinned by Mrs. Slade's own hands behind the closed inner door, and you inspect the silk lashing under the lamp with a needle's point. 8 turns, unshifted, not a fibre sprung. It held through the storm. Of course it held. You find you're as proud of 8 turns of buttonhole twist as you have ever been of anything in your life, and you may stay proud lying there. 130-odd years later, I promise you, there are women who would understand that pride to the bone. Below, the tea hour holds the private wing in its mildest hush. She takes it by the fire, the small fire, with the papers of the second post. The pink of the drive fades back to the usual pale. Marco is carried up, inspects the hearthrug, disapproves of the snow on the terrace through the window and forgives it. Dr. Reed makes the second of his 2 daily looks in. Every day of his service, morning and evening, that unbudging Aberdeen thoroughness. His notes of these years survive and are one of the master keys to this whole hidden house. And finds Her Majesty, after 2 hours in a blizzard at 71, in what he records with professional resignation as excellent spirits and no chill whatever. The chill, as ever, has gone to the lady in waiting. Marie Adier is at this moment in her own room with her feet in a mustard bath, drafting in her head the Tuesday letter and being brought by a housemaid who happens to be a friend of Annie Phelps, a second can of properly scalding water, unasked. The below-stairs ledger keeping its unphotographed accounts, and then, at the lamp-lighting hour, you're given the errand I promised you this morning, the reading lamps and fresh blotting paper to the Queen's sitting-room, and so it is that you are kneeling at the corner table, trimming a wick with scissors that must not click, when the munshi comes in with the books, and you become, for 20 minutes, invisible in your corner, forgotten by the kindest employer in England, one of the only people of your station ever to watch the Queen of Great Britain and Ireland, Empress of India, do her homework. It is homework. That is the first thing to understand, and the household never has. There is a plain deal writing slope she uses for it, and exercise books, ruled exercise books, the kind a schoolmaster buys by the dozen, and in them, page after page, date after date, her own hand, English sentences, then the same sentences in Urdu script, corrected, recopied, tried again. She has filled these books steadily since the summer of 1887, and she will go on filling them for the rest of her life. They survive, shelves of them, and scholars in your century have turned their pages and found what you're watching now. A woman in her 70s learning a new alphabet right to left, with the diligence of a girl sitting an examination. 13 years of daily lessons in the end. Nobody makes her. No one on earth can make her do anything. You have spent this entire day inside the proof. She does it because she wants to understand the greatest of all the land she rules and will never see, because letters and petitions come to her in this script, and she is not willing to be a stranger to them, because, say it simply, the way the household never would, she likes it. It is the 1 hour of her day that faces forward. Abdul Karim teaches the way the best teachers anywhere teach, quietly, without flattery, without fear. You watch him set the day's sentences, listen, correct. Correct her, the uncorrectable, the woman before whom prime ministers arrange their very grammar. A small shake of the head, the word given again, patiently, and she takes the correction, takes it, repeats it, writes it out. In this castle where no one may tell her she is wrong, she has carved out at the lamplit end of the day one sanctioned hour of being wrong, and defends that hour like a fortress. If you want to know what she might have been in another life, watch her now, bent over the slope, tongue of the pen scratching, asking, whether the letter joins or stands alone. She's a good student. Her teacher says so, and her teacher does not say what is not true. It is one of the reasons the household cannot forgive him. Because they cannot. I said I would be honest about this, and the honest version matters, especially now, especially half asleep when things sink in deepest. The court, with exceptions you could count on one hand, resents this man from Agra with a resentment that is one part jealousy of any favourite, and a much larger, uglier part that your own century has a plainer name for. They resent his rooms, his portrait painted in oils, his place near her at Osborne and Balmoral, his title, his influence they mostly imagine. The gentlemen mutter, the doctors and secretaries fume in their diaries, and after her death. I will tell you this now, so that this hour of the day gets its due weight. They will move within weeks, while the flags are still at half-mast, to burn his papers and send him home, and try to scrub this whole quiet, lamp-lit hour out of the record. They will nearly succeed. It will take 100 years and his family's own kept journals for the story to walk back out of the fire. She knows what her household thinks. She is not, whatever the comic papers say, a fool about people, and every day, against her own family, against her own court, in the teeth of a disapproval that would flatten most sovereigns, the lesson happens anyway. You may make of her what you like. This day has given you plenty, but give her this. The same granite will that keeps a dead man's water hot, keeps this living man's chair by her table, and no one in the British Empire can shift either one. The wick is trimmed, the lamps are lit. You gather your scissors onto their cloth and back out of the room unseen, past the low murmur of a very old voice trying a new word twice, then a third time, getting it right. And the last thing you hear through the closing door is her teacher in his quiet, careful English. That was well done, Your Majesty. And you carry that down the corridor with your candle. It is the only time in this entire day that you have heard anyone tell her she has done something well, not because they feared her or served her, but because it was true. 53 years a queen, the dogs, and him. You reach the workroom, and Mrs. Slade looks up from the crepe at whatever is showing on your face, and does not ask, and you do not say. But that night's entry in the ledger of things you understand about this house is written in your steadiest hand. The strangest habit of the loneliest woman in Europe is that once a day, by lamplight, she arranges to be an ordinary pupil in a little room, and for 1 hour nothing in that room is dead and nothing in it is moved, because for 1 hour nothing in it needs to be. The evening errands take you twice down the length of the private corridor with your candle lamp, and the private corridor after dark is where this house keeps its heart. And its heart is a museum, and the museum is of the dead. You walk it slowly because you are carrying flame past treasure, and slow is the law. And so you have time every evening to pass them all. The photographs first. They stand on every table, hang 2 and 3 deep between the pictures, and such photographs. Not only the living, the tribe of children and grandchildren scattered across the thrones of Europe, but the dead, frame by frame among them, as if no one had told them anything had changed. Albert in every year of his short run of years, her mother, her daughter Alice, gone in 78, grandchildren taken as infants, and you did not believe this until you had dusted its frame yourself. The prince on his deathbed, photographed where he lay, a picture she ordered, kept and copied. In her bedrooms, in every residence, that photograph hangs over the empty pillow beside her own, and has hung there for 29 years. She sleeps every night of her life beneath it. I told you at the start of tonight that we would go strange places, and I promised to tell you true from polished. This one is true. Plain household fact, attested from inside the walls. The dead in this house are not put away. They are put where they can be seen, because being seen is what the living can still do for them, and beyond the photographs, the marble. On tables and under glass shades along that corridor and in the private rooms sit small white sculptures that stop every new servant in their tracks. Candlelight moving on them like breath. Hands, children's hands and feet, life-size, carved and cast in marble. The baby's fat little fists of 40 years ago, modelled while the baby slept and rendered permanent in stone. You have dusted a marble foot smaller than your palm, and the woman it belonged to is a grandmother now in Berlin. There is a cast of his hand, too, made after death, and it is not on a corridor table. It is kept where she keeps it, within reach, and the maids who have seen its place say she has slept with it beside her, the cold white fingers of it all these years, because sometimes in the night one wants a hand to hold, and this is the hand, and it is the only version of it left. And you stand in that corridor, 19 years old, candle in your fist, chilblains and all, and the wind of the great frost muttering in the chimneys, and you feel the thing every servant of this house sooner or later feels, and almost none of them ever says. It is not horror. You expected horror, your first weeks, hearing of all this in whispers. It is not horror at all. Your own mother, in a cottage in Norfolk, keeps a lock of hair from the sister you lost at 2 years old, folded in paper inside her Bible, and touches it on the anniversary. Half the village keeps something, a curl under glass, a photograph if they could ever afford the one visit to the man in Lynn, a brass button off a coat. This age you live in buries too many people too early, and it has built a whole quiet craft of holding on. The hair worked into rings, the memorial cards, the post-mortem portraits. And your queen does what your mother does. She simply has 13 acres to do it in, and marble instead of paper, and no one with the standing to tell her when to fold the paper closed. That is the truth about this castle you will carry out of it whenever you go. It is not a stranger place than your mother's Bible. It is your mother's Bible, the size of a fortress, with an empire in bond to keep every page exactly where it lies. The habits are royal, the grief is everybody's. Below at 9, dinner happens. The ceremony of it rolling on far beneath you like weather on another coast, and how that table works, its rules and its terrors and its 50 years of hungry guests, is a story this channel has already kept a whole other night for, so tonight we leave the dining room its privacy, and stay up here in the lamplight, where our day actually lives. Because at 9:30, the second boxes come up from the last train, and tonight the boxes are not routine, and this is the piece of the 6th of December, 1890, that the history books will keep. You see it arrive because you're on the back landing when Joseph brings the dispatch case up from the telegraph room at the double, at the actual double, taking stairs 2 at a time in state livery, which you've never once seen, with the night's telegrams in the locked pouch, and behind him, already reaching for his keys, Sir Henry Ponsonby, called from his own dinner, napkin apparently still in hand when the boy found him. The lamps in the secretary's room burn late while the pouch is opened and sorted, and within the half hour the summary goes up to the Queen's rooms, and here is what it says. And this part is not our borrowed maid's knowledge. This part is the plain record, so let me set it out the way it reached the world. In London that afternoon, in Committee Room 15 of the House of Commons, the Irish Parliamentary Party, the 80-odd members who under Charles Stewart Parnell have made Home Rule for Ireland the burning question of British politics, completed the 6th day of the bitterest meeting in their history and split in two. Parnell, the chief, the uncrowned King of Ireland, ruined 3 weeks ago in the divorce court. The O'Shea case, the scandal of the age, refused to yield the leadership. And this afternoon, while your Queen's carriage was breasting the drifts on Snow Hill, 44 of his colleagues rose and walked out of the room and left him sitting there with the rump of his party, and Irish politics broke on that floor into halves that will fight each other for a decade. Saturday, the 6th of December, 1890. It is in every newspaper in the world by Monday. And the Queen, she has followed the whole affair, that is documented. Her letters and journal this season track the divorce case and its fallout with the close, unillusioned attention of a woman who has read every Irish paper in every red box for 50 years, and her opinion of Mr. Parnell's conduct is exactly what you would expect from the widow of Albert the Good, and is on record, and I will let her keep the wording of it. What matters to you tonight on your landing with your candle is simpler and stranger, and it is this. The news of the age comes up the back stairs of this castle in a locked pouch on the coldest night of the coldest December ever measured, to a 71-year-old woman who has already this day mourned her dead, defied a blizzard, governed an empire's paperwork, and conjugated Urdu verbs, and she does not send it away until morning. The boxes are opened. The lamp in her sitting room stays lit. Sir Henry goes up and comes down and goes up again, and the last state paper is read and marked in that sloping hand before the castle is allowed its sleep. 53 years on the throne, and the day's work has never once been left for tomorrow. Not the week her husband died, not tonight, not any night between. The comic papers draw the recluse. The red boxes know better. They always knew better. You pass Sir Henry once more on the stairs, near 11, as you go up with the warming pan. He's coming down for the last time, folder empty, whiskers slightly bent, 65 years old at the end of an 18-hour Saturday, and he pauses to let you by with your load, because he is that sort of man, and says to himself as much as to you, with a tired glance back up the stairwell at the lamplight leaking under her door, "Busy times, my girl, busy times." A breath. She'll see it all steady, mind, she always does, and he goes down into the dark of the lower landing, and you go up into the cold of the upper one, and above you both, behind her door, the small stubborn lamp of the British Empire burns on past 11 o'clock, exactly as it has burned since before your mother was born. One duty left now. The day closes the way it opened. You knew it would. You felt the shape of it this morning in the dark. Everything in this castle comes around again. That is the whole design of it. The last errand of the night is the first errand of the morning wearing evening clothes. But before the last errand there is the thing she does that no one attends at all. The habit with no servant in the room, no witness but the lamp. And it may be the strangest of the whole day precisely because it is the least strange thing in the world. She writes her diary. Every night, every single night, and here the word every is doing more work than it has done all day, because the record is not a figure of speech. She began the journal in 1832, a girl of 13 with a new notebook, and her mother reading over her shoulder, and she has kept it in her own hand every day since. Through her accession at 18, through the wedding morning of 1840, through 9 child beds, through the 14th of December 1861, and every gutted day after it, through jubilees and assassins' pistols and 40 governments, at Windsor and Balmoral, and on ships and in trains, day upon day upon day for 58 years and counting, until the shelf of volumes runs past 100 and the word count runs into the tens of millions. It is, by the time you're carrying warming pans past her door, very possibly the longest continuous account any human being has ever kept of a life. And she does not keep it as monument. She keeps it the way you breathe. The day is not finished until it is written. Tonight, past 11, with the frost flowering the inside of her own windows, hers too, rank has one privilege fewer than you'd think in this house. She will draw the blotter close and set down the 6th of December, 1890, in that galloping hand. The depth of the snow, the drive, and how the horses manage the drifts. Dear Marco's opinions, the lesson. The dreadful news from Committee Room 15 and what she thinks of it. The whole day pressed flat and saved, like every day before it, because a day written down is a day that cannot be taken away. You know why she does it. After today you know exactly why. It is the album and the photographs and the hot water in ink. It is the nightly proof that nothing, not even time, will be allowed to move a single hour from where she left it. And because this channel deals honestly or not at all, here is the one hard thing I must set beside that lamplit page, and then we will let it rest. The journal outlives her by less than you would hope. Her youngest daughter, Beatrice, asleep tonight somewhere in this very castle, a married woman of 33 who has spent her whole life as her mother's shadow and secretary, will inherit it as literary executor with instructions, and Beatrice will spend 3 decades copying the journals out into her own edited hand, volume by volume, softening, trimming, omitting, and burning the originals as she goes, page by page, year by year, into the grate. 111 blue copybooks are what will reach your century, faithful in outline, forever silent on whatever a daughter decided posterity should not hear. Historians have mourned it ever since. Beatrice believed to her own last day that she was doing exactly what her mother asked. Both things are true, and neither is ours to judge at midnight. But it is why, tonight, I want you to see the page itself, under the lamp, in the only hour it will ever exist entire. The Queen's own 6th of December, unedited, unsoftened, alive. See it clearly. Almost no one else ever will. The last errand then, 11:30, the evening visit. You go with Mrs. Slade, as she told you this morning you would, back along the shadow passage of the north side, your 4th passage of it today, and the castle so still now that you can hear the separate qualities of the silence. The deep wool silence of snow on all the roofs, the thin ringing silence of frost in the stone, and underneath both, the older silence that lives in this wing all year, the one you carried water into at 5:30. Mrs. Slade has the lamp. You have the can, the evening can, smaller but hot, properly hot, because lukewarm is a failure even at midnight in an empty room. She unlocks the door and you go in, and you do the evening office as it has been done 10,000 nights. The fresh water into the basin, the towel squared, the night-clothes laid out upon the bed as if a man might yet come up yawning from the library. Everything renewed, everything ready, the room turned down for the 10,000th night of a stay that ended in 1861. The cold in here has a quality the cold nowhere else in the castle has. It is not deader. You thought 8 months ago that it would feel dead. It is expectant. It is the cold of a platform where a train is always almost due. And while Mrs. Slade squares the towel to her satisfaction, you hold the lamp near the table by the window, and you look, permitted, tonight, unhurried, for the first time since your second week, at the small medicine glass standing on its spot. And here is what 8 months have taught you to see. In the housemaid's album for this room, Mrs. Kemp showed you the page once, holding the book so your breath fell short of it. That glass is in the photographed where the doctor set it down, so that no morning's dusting could ever shift it unawares, checked, print against table for 29 years of mornings. The photograph does not change, so nothing has happened. Mrs. Kemp's whole science resting at its point of origin. The album exists because of this glass. The whole vast apparatus, the frozen rooms, the immovable candlesticks, the tens of millions of diary words, all of it is this glass, multiplied by an empire. One woman's hand set it down on a December night, and another woman's will has held it there, against the whole current of time, while outside these windows the century-invented telephones and dynamite and photographs that move. You are 19. You will think about this glass, on and off, for the rest of your life. I can tell you that with confidence, because everyone who ever stood where you are standing did. Mrs. Slade finishes the towel, and then, instead of turning for the door, she stands a moment in the middle of the room with the lamp, and looks around it, at the waiting clothes, the waiting basin, the waiting glass, with an expression you have never seen on the closed ledger of her face, and would not have recognised this morning. You recognise it now. You've been learning it all day in a corridor of marble hands. I was here, she says, quietly to the room. You happened to be in it. December of 61. Laundry maid, my first place, 16 years old. I'd been in the castle 9 weeks. The fever, they said, and then better, and then not better. The lamp does not so much as tremble. Those hands have carried worse than lamps. The night it ended, they had us all kneel down, the whole household, wherever we stood. I knelt on the flags by the laundry stove, and the bell went. The great bell, the one they only ring for it. And I thought, being 16 and a fool, things will be different here now. And then I thought, because we could hear it through the walls, girl, all that week, a sound I'll not describe to you, I thought, God help her, whatever stays the same. She trims the lamp a fraction. 11 stitches of silence. 29 years I've helped keep this room. Girls come through. Clever girls, kind girls, and they whisper that it's queer, and they're not wrong. And it does them no harm to think it. But you did the water this morning at 5:30, in the dark, in the frost, done proper, steam coming off it, for nobody, they'd say. And tonight her light's still burning over the boxes, and next week she'll walk to the mausoleum through whatever this sky has left, and the year after, and the year after that. She looks at you, and the ledger opens just once all the way. It's not queer, Ellen. It's just love, with nowhere to go, and there's no one in this world can teach you what to do with that. So we bring the water. She locks the door behind you. The click of it is the softest sound of the whole day, and the day has been made of soft sounds. We bring the water, file that beside steady hands. Between the two of them you could run a kingdom. Between the two of them tonight, somebody does. Midnight, or the last shore of it, and the castle is settling. And a castle settling in a great frost is a sound you will miss all your life once you've left service, though you'd never believe it tonight. The stone ticks as it gives up the day's little heat. The elm avenue keeps up its long sea mutter to the southeast. Somewhere below, the night watchman's felted steps cross a courtyard on their fixed round, his lantern glow sliding across the workroom ceiling and away, regular as a lighthouse. And down in the great quadrangle the sentries change with a clink and a stamp muffled to almost nothing by the snow. The last doors are locked in their fixed order. The gas goes down jet by jet along the east front. Behind one door on the north side, a lamp you now know everything about burns a while longer over a diary page. Behind another, farther along, a locked room holds its 10,000th night of readiness, water cooling slowly in the basin, patient as stone. You climb to the attics the way you climb every night, candle end in a tin holder, 46 steps and a corkscrew into air so cold it feels solid, like pushing your face through cloth. Annie is in the bed already, a shape under 2 blankets, both cloaks and an ancient counterpane, with her breath standing above her in the candlelight like a small ghost keeping watch. Feet, she says, by way of good evening, are a myth. I've decided. There's boots and there's stumps, and in between's a myth. And she hauls up the covers for you, and you blow the candle and get in, and the two of you lie shivering in the dark in your shared cocoon of everything either of you owns. Brickless, because the brick is out in the coach house or wherever fur rugs spend the night, having done its finest hour's work in the history of bricks. Worth it, you ask the dark. A long pause, air whitening invisibly. Her face when she come down them steps, Annie says at last, meaning Mr. Dean, snow to the eyebrows on ankles she couldn't feel, like a drowned duchess. The grin arrives in her voice. Worth it. And then, being Annie, she's asleep between one breath and the next, 17 years old, chilblains and courage, and a penny a week for warmth she gave away. And you're left with the ceiling 3 feet above your face, and the frost feathering the little window, and the whole enormous day turning slowly over in your head like a page. Count it with me, one last time, the way you'll count it for your grandchildren, the way I've counted it for you. This is what the Queen of England did today, this one day, this ordinary Saturday, and does every single day, and has done some of it for 29 years. She had hot water carried to a dead man's dressing room before dawn, and will again tomorrow. She had her windows open to the coldest December ever measured, because cold is health, and no one on earth may tell her otherwise. She breakfasted with a Pomeranian among the silver. She read and marked and returned the papers of an empire before most of her ministers were dressed. She kept every object in 900 rooms nailed to its photograph. She exiled tobacco to the far end of 13 acres. She drove out into a blizzard in an open carriage, punctually, because stopping is the one thing she does not do, and came back pink and planning tomorrow's dose. She sat as a pupil, right to left, before the one man in her household unafraid to correct her. She walked a corridor where the dead stand framed among the living and marble hands sleep under glass. She worked the red boxes past 11, while a political age cracked in 150 miles away. And at the end of all of it, alone, she wrote the whole day down in her own hand, as she has every night since she was 13, so that not 1 hour of it could ever be taken from her. The comic papers will draw the little round widow and label her idle, morbid, hidden. Let them. You carried the water. You know what you know. There is nothing idle in that schedule and nothing hidden in it either. It is all one single act, performed hourly, in plain sight of anyone with the wit to read it. A woman decided 29 years ago this coming week that love was not going to end just because a life did. Everything else, every oddity on tonight's list, is only the machinery of keeping that promise. The strangest daily routine in the history of monarchy, and every gear of it turns on one December night in 1861, and the year will wheel her round its fixed circle, the way it always does, the way the household could recite in its sleep and mostly does. 12 days from now, the vans and the special train, and Christmas at Osborne by the Grey Solent, as it has been kept since the first widowed Christmas of 1861. The spring at Windsor, the May primroses her birthday, the summer crossing to the Highlands, Balmoral and the hills he built her, the servants' plaid and the pony carts, the autumn southward again, and every 14th of December, wherever the wheel has carried her, the Black Rock in the calendar, the mausoleum at Frogmore, the wreaths in the frost. Seasons will change around her precisely so that she need not change at all. That is what the whole realm-spanning clockwork of residences and trains and vans is for. You understand that now too. It isn't travel, it's orbit. You will serve this house a while longer. How long, the record doesn't say. The record, as I told you at the start, never said your name at all. The frost will break at last in the new year. The brooch will go quietly to the jeweller from Osborne and come back with its catch-made sound, and no one will ever tell her. Annie's knuckles will heal in the spring the way 17-year-old knuckles do. And the mornings will go on, can after can, steam rising in the cold for no living soul until they don't. Because one thing before sleep, and then I'm done. You've earned the truth entire. You do not yet know, none of you in that freezing attic kingdom know, that you are living in the last long lamplit chapter of something. 10 years and a few weeks from this night, on a January evening at Osborne with her children and grandchildren around her, the woman whose water you carried will die in her turn, and the great bell will toll, and the album will finally close, and the world that comes after, the fast, bright, loud, electric world, will look back at her frozen rooms and her marble hands and her 40 years of black, and will laugh a little and shiver a little and name a whole age after her, and never quite decide whether what it feels is pity or awe. You don't know any of that, under your 2 blankets and 2 cloaks. For you there is only tomorrow, 5:30, the can, the corridor, the steam in the dark, and honestly, tonight, with the snow coming down on 13 acres of towers, on the long walk and the frozen fountain, on the kennels and the mews and the little lit window where a diary is closing, tomorrow is enough. Warm enough now at last is the 2 of you, in the smallest bed in the biggest castle on earth. Fed enough, boiled beef and sweet pudding hold a body through a frost. Safe enough, behind 800 years of stone, with a watchman's lantern crossing the ceiling on its rounds. That's more than most of England has tonight, out there under this same snow. That's enough. It was always going to have to be enough. And tonight, feet against Annie's, the day done, the water carried. It honestly actually is. So let the day go now, piece by piece, the way the castle let it go. Let the workroom go dark behind its frost flowers, the crape at rest on the table, the needle parked in its wool. Let Joseph go, tin-buttoned safe against his ribs, snoring the sleep of the reprieved in the footman's dormitory. Let Mrs. Kemp go, her album on the shelf by her bed like a Bible. 40 years of unchanged rooms keeping watch over her unchanging sleep. Let Sir Henry go, the last memorandum drafted in his head dissolving into dreams no queen can edit. Let Marie go, feet finally thawed, the Tuesday letter half composed and already funnier than the day deserved. Let the Munshi go, tomorrow's sentence is chosen, The lamp out in the quiet rooms they will one day try to burn out of the story and fail. Let Mrs. Slade go. Last of all below stairs, as always. The keys hung in their order, the beautiful hands finally still. And let her go too. The lamp is out now under the door on the north side. The diary is closed on the 6th of December. The blotter has drunk the last of the ink. The day is saved, pressed flat, hers forever, whatever a daughter's great some day decides. She sleeps beneath the photograph, as she has these 29 years, the cast of a hand within reach of her hand, a Pomeranian's basket by the fire burned down to its embers, the windows, you know about the windows by now, open to the healthiest air in England, 16 degrees of frost, and the snow coming down without a sound on the castle, and the college and the river and the whole sleeping shire, and she is, on her own terms, by her own lights, in the only way left to her. Not alone. The rooms are kept. The water was brought. Nothing was moved today. Nothing changed today. She checked. Breathe with the house now. In, slow, the cold clean air she'd prescribe you herself. Out slower, a small ghost rising into the dark and fading. The watchman's lantern crosses the ceiling. Gone. It will come again. You don't need to wait for it. The elms keep their long, low sea sound down the long walk, 2 2/3 miles of it, steady as surf, steady as sleep. The stone ticks, cooling. The frost writes its slow white ferns across the little window, leaf by leaf, the patientest handwriting in the world, and nobody will ever edit it, and by morning it will be perfect. Centuries will pass. The world you walk today will change past all recognition. The gas jets will give way to wires, the dispatch boxes to signals moving through the air itself. The great frost will melt into the record books. The empire of 372 million will dissolve back into its 100 nations like frost off a morning window. The black wardrobe will scatter into museum cases, lit softly, labelled. The journals will become 111 blue copybooks and a daughter's long silence. The hot water will stop. It did stop at the last, when the hand that ordered it was stilled, and the locked room will be opened and aired and shown politely to tourists in their millions, who will file past the spot where a medicine glass once stood for 4 decades and feel, without quite knowing why, a small cold current cross the back of the neck. But people will not change. Not in the one place tonight was ever really about. People will still keep a dead man's photograph where the morning light finds it, still wind a stopped watch that was somebody's, because letting it run down feels like a second funeral, still lay 2 plates sometimes by mistake, on purpose, still learn something new and difficult at 70 to keep 1 hour of the day facing forward, still write the day down before sleep so it cannot be taken away, still walk out into the weather because stopping is the one thing they dare not do, still keep in a drawer, in a Bible, in a fortress of 13 acres or a cottage in Norfolk, some small unmovable thing, a curl of hair, a glass, a brick-warmed memory of a friend, that time is simply not permitted to touch. Some things don't change. Grief doesn't change. Love, with nowhere to go, doesn't change. It just finds its errands. And morning after morning, in every century there will ever be, somebody carries the water. Tomorrow there will be the bells at 5:30, and the can, and the shadow passage, and the steam rising in the cold for no living soul. Tomorrow there will be the windows opening latch by latch down the east front, and Marco among the silver, and the red boxes off the morning train, and Mrs. Kemp on her slow patrol with the world under her arm. Tomorrow there will be the drive. Later perhaps on account of the snow being deeper, but there will be the drive. There was always the drive. Somewhere in the long memory of the world there is always a small dark carriage going out into the weather and coming back pink. Tomorrow the lesson, tomorrow the lamp, tomorrow the diary, tomorrow and tomorrow the same as the 10,000 yesterdays, the same as all the winters stretching out ahead of that castle like the long walk itself, straight and white and disappearing into its own quiet distance. But that's tomorrow. Tomorrow is her business, and she's never once left it unattended, and she won't begin tonight. Right now there is only this: the attic, the blankets, the breathing beside you, the snow doing its patient work on the roofs of everything you know. Nobody needs you until the bells. Nobody in 900 rooms needs a single thing from you until the bells, and the bells are hours and hours away, on the far side of the deepest, stillest, best-kept night of the year. The whole castle has been made ready. You helped make it ready. And now the whole castle is doing the one thing it does as beautifully as any building on earth. It is holding still. 13 acres of stone holding still, 900 rooms holding still, one small sleeping woman and everything she has ever refused to lose held perfectly, patiently, faithfully still, and you, in your high corner of it, held too. So let it come now. Let sleep take you the way the snow took the carriage on the long walk, gradually, softly, whitely, a little at a time, and then entirely. Let the castle fade, tower by tower. Let the corridor go, all 550 feet of it, lamp by lamp. Let the day's voices go. Steady hands, we bring the water, nothing must be moved. Dissolving now into the long low mutter of the elms. Let your thoughts slow and settle, each one back onto its own photograph, exactly where it belongs, so that nothing has happened, so that nothing at all has happened. Let them slow, let them soften, let them stop. You've earned this rest. 8 months of dark mornings, 1 whole day of frost and steam and silk, 25 pounds of hot water, carried without spilling, for love that wasn't even yours. Take it. The bell will come again at 5:30. But that's tomorrow. That's 130 years ago. That's nowhere at all now. Nowhere but here, in the warm dark, snow on the roof, feet finely warm, the whole vast machine of the world wound down at last to the size of one quiet breathing room. Sleep now the way the castle sleeps, kept and checked and gently held with somebody faithful walking the rounds, and dream of whatever dreams may come. Good night.